Okay gang, Private Jack here. Welcome to part 10 in my series on how to decompile a valve model, get it into Blender, change it up a little bit, and fire it back at Source FilmMaker. So we now have a compiled model, and we compiled it using both Blender and Crowbar. So now you have a good idea what it takes to get that model into Blender, edit it up, and actually export and compile the model. What we have to do now is we have to fix the textures for it, and we want to fix the skins. To do that, we're going to use GIMP in the VTF plugin, and if you remember rightly, when we created the pings so that we could see what they looked like, we created two XCF files. Those are GIMP configuration files, and right now they are containing the information that we need to actually make these skins. So we're going to open those two files up, open the P badge and the decal. We're going to open both of those up. We're going to select the frame XCF, and we're going to export this to where it needs to live as a VTF file. So basically I'm not going to make any more changes. I'm going to make sure that I have my P badge UV image turned off. Select the layer that I want to actually import or export. Come over here, File, Export, and all I need to do now is change this folder to my user mod, and where I'm getting the information from is from my QC. So I want to go to user mod, materials, because everything material related is based off of the mod materials folder. I want to go to models, private jack, props, models, private jack, props, and I want to create a folder in this folder, and that is the P badge folder. Create a folder, P badge, and I want to drill into that. And where I got that information is right here. This is where I want that new VTF to go, and I'm going to name it the same name as I gave it in my materials panel back in Blender. So I'm going to click on the materials panel. That was P badge. So I'm going to call this pbadge.vtf. Home, V, and VTF. As soon as I hit export, it's going to bring up the VTF interface, and here is where I can change the various types of VTF files. For this one, it's nothing, merge visible. Okay, I want the alpha channels. I'm going to leave it as a 7.4 orange box 2007 type file. Leave the bitmaps on and hit OK. That now created this particular image in my P badge materials, or in my materials P badge folder. So materials, models, private jack, props, P badge, and here's the VTF. Okay, now I have to do the same for the other four pictures here. So I'm going to turn on one, make sure I have it selected, file, export. This is the first image that I want my model to display. So using my Blender's material naming convention, I'm going to call it P badge decal. I'm going to use my recently used, come into my P badge folder, change this to P badge decal.vtf. This here is going to be nothing because it's a standalone image. Leave everything else the same and hit OK. And where did it go? There it is. Okay, so there is the first image that our skins are going to call. To do the next ones, all I do is make sure I have it turned on, selected, file export, and I should still be in that pbadge folder, so all I have to do now is rename my file. And what I'm going to name it by is the naming conventions that I gave my textures in my QC. So this one is going to be Decal1. Pbadge Decal1, VTF, hit enter, nothing, right, okay. And I do that for the other two. Turn that one off, file export, Decal2, okay. Turn that one off, that one on, select the layer, export, Decal3, okay. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to create that animated texture. And the way that I do that is first off, I don't want this UV picture in the animated VTF, not GIF, but VTF. So I'm going to delete this layer. I'm going to turn on the other three so that all four are visible. I'm going to come over here to File. Before I do that, I'm going to select the first picture that I want to actually play. I'm going to File, Export. And I'm going to change this to Decal4 because it'll be the last skin that's loaded. And it's a VTF file. I'm going to export it. Hello, export. There we go. Okay. Here in Use Layer As, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change that to animation frames. And what that will do is it will cause this VTF group to actually become like an animated GIF. Okay, so I'm going to leave everything else the same and click OK. This one's going to take it a little bit longer, and it's going to be about 5 or 6 megs big. There it is. So I can't actually see this thing play in my Windows browser, and I can't really see it play in GIMP. The way that I can verify that this is an actual animated VTF is by launching VTFEdit. Hello, VTFEdit. Come on. I'm going to minimize GIMP right now. I'm in VTFEdit. I'm going to go to the material folders with an open. And user mod, materials model, private jack props, pbadge. Okay, here's that GIF, or that VTF that I just created that's supposedly animated. I'm going to open that, and you say, well, it's not moving. And the reason for that is that it's in frames. If I press play or change the frame number, we can see that it is actually animated. Press play, and that is what is going to play. The way we control the actual speed of the texture is through the VMT. Okay, let's stop that for now. And now that we have VTFEdit open, we're going to use the tools section here and actually create simple VMTs for these materials. And this is how simple it is. All I have to do is load the base texture and bitmap, bump maps, and other stuff if I have it. In this case, I only have a base texture. I go into options, and I have to change the shader because Source FilmMaker does not work with light mapped generic. I'm going to change the shader to vertex lit generic. Surface, I'm going to have a quick look here and see if there's any surfaces. Flash, paper, do I have paper? No. So I'm going to just leave it as default. Keywords I could add. It's not a translucent material, and I want it to no call in case I can see through one of the pieces of mesh on the actual model. Okay, once that's done, all I have to do is press create, and it will create the simple VMT. To do the next one, because none of these settings are going to change, all I have to do is load my textures. So pbadge, open, create. Decal, open, create. And it automatically uses the VTF file name as the base name for the VMT. These first two textures that I'm using must match the names of the materials that I have in Blender. So there we go. Decal 1, open, create, open, 2, open, create, 3, open, create. I'm finished using VTFEdit. This is just a quick way of doing very simple VMTs. So I can close that, close that. Now what I have to do is I have to come back and I have to edit this Decal 4 VMT because it has a proxy where the actual texture is an animated VTF, and I have to tell Source FilmMaker that it has to play the frames. So I'm going to open this in Notepad++. Here's the very simple VMT, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go off to the developer website. I'm going to type the word proxy in here, or proxies. I'm going to scroll down here, and I'm going to go to the list of material proxies page. I'm going to scroll down a little bit and look up animated textures. So here's the animated texture and the various information that I have to add to that texture. So the first thing I have to add, and when I'm working with something new and I don't know how to do it, what I'll do is I'll actually go and find a material that already has a sample of that in here. So in this case, I'm going to open the Sniper Blue in Volan, and down here we have animated textures. So this is what that has to look like. I'm going to pick up that proxy and the animated textures statement. I'm going to copy that, bring it back into Decal 4, and I'm going to paste it. Okay, so basically what this is saying is it's an animated texture, and the texture that is animated is the bump map. This particular VTF does not have a bump map. What I need to use is the actual base texture. So I changed that to base texture. And it's saying that the bump frame variable, frame number variable is dependent on the number of frames in the bump map. Well, we don't have a bump map, so this actually becomes frames. And this here is a float number of how many frames per second that frame is going to actually play. If I leave that at 70, it's going to flash before your eyes so fast that you can't actually see it. So I'm going to turn this way down, and as it's a float, I can use decimal numbers to about 0.5. So half a frame a second. Okay, with that, now I have to look at my curly brackets. So I've got an open for the texture. I've got an open for proxies. I've got an open for the animated texture. I've got a close for the animated texture, but I don't have a close for the actual proxy. So I have to tab over and close off the proxy, and then I finally have a close for the texture. So now I can file save that. And that's that VMT written for the animated GIF. Animated VTF. You can close that down. I'm going to come back into Blender now. We have the model compiled, and I'm going to launch the HalfLife model viewer from Blender. So come back into my Scenes tab, scroll down to Blender Source Tools, down here at the bottom below the all this information, I've got Launch HLMV. I click on that. File, load the model. Here's my two models that I created, the one from Blender and the one from Crowbar. I'm going to click it on, and here's my model. And spin it around, have a quick look. Looks not too bad. I'm going to now move into model and have a look at my skins. I've got 5 skins, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I don't know why the frame doesn't work. Basically, I can't really see whether or not this is actually playing an animated GIF. VTF. Okay, even if I select the material itself and come down and select the material here, it still doesn't give me that frame ability. So I'm going to have to check that someplace else. Now remember, we gave this thing a blank body group. So here under body, I'm going to look here, and I've got 2 submodels. I've got visible and I have invisible. So there's my body groups. They work. Bones, I'm going to highlight the bone. There's my bone. And hitboxes now. Hitboxes are important. Basically what they do is they encompass the actual model. And as it stands right now, this particular model has no hitboxes. If I spawn this in Source Filmmaker, what's going to happen is if the camera hits an exposed piece of mesh, this model may disappear from the camera. Still in the game, but it may disappear from the camera. I believe the camera uses hitboxes as a target type environment for the model. I don't know, but there's been problems reported about this in the past. So I'm going to turn off automated hitboxes. I'm going to select the metal bone. I'm going to create a new bone. Where do I do that now? Add new hitbox. There we go. I'm going to create a new hitbox rather. And this thing is massive. All I want to do is make it cover that particular picture based on the metal bone. So down here I have the ability of changing the size of my hitboxes. I'm going to turn that down to 2, and tab doesn't work. You actually have to click into the box to change it. 2, and I'm going to change that to 2 just to give me a reference of where I'm at. I update the hitbox, and that's where my hitbox is now. So I've got to increase it on the up-down axis. This is probably front, no, this is left and right, I think. So I'm going to increase that to 6. Update the hitbox. There we go. It is left and right. Okay. And it's a little bit big, so probably about a 4.5. Update the hitbox. And right here I've got mesh clipping through the hitbox, and that's no good. So I'm going to ramp that up to 5. Update the hitbox. Now my mesh is inside the hitbox, but I can move it over a little bit, and I want to go -1 to move it over. Nope, too far. -0.2. Update the hitbox. There, that looks better. More centered. Now I want to increase the length of it, or the height of it. I'm going to come in here and go probably 10. Update the hitbox. 10 is too big, and basically I want to move this hitbox down a little bit, so I'm going to move it down so that it's about center here. So that's probably down about 3. 3. Update the, oh, wrong way, -3. And this position is based on the bone that I have selected. So that looks probably -2.5. Update the hitbox. That looks a little bit better. This can probably come up to an 8. Not 89. 8. Update the hitbox even more. 6. That's not too bad. And for the actual depth of it, I want to -0.2. Update the hitbox. Wrong way. 0.2. Update the hitbox. And I want to shrink that down to probably 1. Update the hitbox, and I'm outside the hitbox. So if the camera hits that corner there, this model would probably disappear. So bring that back up to 2. And that looks like it's pretty good. There's no mesh clipping through the hitbox, and that should be good. Now you're saying, okay, that's all fine and good, but how am I going to get this information into where it needs to go? And basically all you do is you click here on Generate QC, go back into your QC, right here, down here where it had the hitbox information. I'm going to select all that, and I'm going to just copy and paste the new hitbox information into it. So the QC block generated by HalfLife model viewer, the surface prop is default, hitbox set is default, that's the name of the hitbox, and here is the hitbox information that was actually added to that model. Delete that, file save the actual QC again, and recompile. come back into the HalfLife model viewer, turn off the hitboxes. Okay. And what we're going to do now is we're going to actually reload the model. So load it. There's the model. Turn on hitboxes. There's the hitbox. And if I come into the bone section, I can highlight the hitbox for that particular bone. There's only one bone. Come back into render. I can turn off that hitbox, go into bones, and there it is. So basically our model now has a hitbox. All that done, all that completed, and guess what? Exit out at HalfLife model viewer, come down here, jump into source FilmMaker, launch. And we're going to load up both of those models, the one with hitbox and the one without. And probably it won't cause any problems not having the hitbox because Source FilmMaker auto generates hitboxes anyway, but you never know. It's always good to just make sure that your model is completely encased in hitboxes. We've done a final compile. We've done all the textures. We're going to load it up in Source FilmMaker, and here we go. I'm not going to load a map in this particular case because all I want to do is look at the actual models in the model viewer. Create an animation set for new model. I want to find my P badge. It's looking in all mods. Here's the new. This is the one that I created with Blender. Did the compile with Blender. So here's the skins. 0, 1, 2, 3, and the animated texture. And the animated texture. Come on, texture, animate. Why are you not animating? 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Maybe I might have to load a map. Okay, while this was loading up, I saw an error on the material 4, which is our actual animated GIF. So if I come down here and change the skin to 4, let's see if I get that error back. Now, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to go and find it. Oh, come on, where are you? There it is. Animated texture unavailable to initialize. Oh, I know what I did wrong. Duh, I think. Where are ya? VMT, base texture, model. Yeah. Proxies. That should work. P badge Decal 4, proxy. texture. That's right. Frame. Frame. A simple S. Save that. Mat. Reload. All materials. A little S. Back the camera off. Go into the body. What we have is the root transform. I'm going to grab the position of the root transform. Come on. There we go. I'm going to grab the position of the root transform, go into motion editor, default this, and the picture pulls itself up onto the floor based on the root transform. As you can see now, my textures are now changing because I fixed the S that was in frames back to frame. And if I look here now and select the unknown, I have the metal bone, which is sitting up here. The model is rotatable here. The model is rotatable here. So if I want to lay this thing down on the ground, I can select the root transform and lie it down on the ground. I can spawn multiple models, copy, paste, and we're going to paste another one, and another one, and another one. Grab this one, move it off to the side. 1, 2, 3, and 4 for 5. Okay, they're all playing the animated GIF right now because I copied it with that particular skin turned on. Come in here, turn back to skin 0. Turn this one to skin 1. Turn this one to skin 2. Turn this one to skin 3. Come on. Stop lagging out on me now. There we go. So there we have all 5 pictures, including the one that's animated. So basically, the other thing, body groups. Right click on the badge, one of them. I'm going to take this one, set body group. Come down here. Badge is turned on. Badge is turned off. So there you have it. One valve model taken from its valve MDL format, decompiled, taken into Blender, edited to be a usable prop, exported, recompiled, textured, and brought back into Source Filmmaker, complete with an animated GIF, JPEG. Why do I keep saying GIF? Jeez. It's my GIF to you. Ha ha ha. With that, I say Private Jack out.